This is a very important video. Every single American needs to see it. It's very, very instructive. This is a video that was uploaded by Charlie Kirk or whoever operates his YouTube channel, entitled "The Best Gun Debate I've Had in Years." It was uploaded on August 8th, 2025, which is almost exactly a month before he was shot. And the reason this is so important is because neither Charlie nor his debater stand on four very simple words found in the Second Amendment: shall not be infringed. You have a right to keep and bear arms, not because the Constitution says so, not because it's written down and codified in the Bill of Rights and the Second Amendment. You have the right to keep and bear arms because you're a human being. And really, it's more powerful to say nobody has the right to keep you from keeping and bearing arms. And before I start playing this, because this is super, super interesting, you have to understand that within the psychological operation, there are two fundamental primary things that you need, two ingredients in order for it to work effectively. You need to exploit fear, and you need to be able to deploy effective deception and lies called propaganda, because fear is primal. If you can get people to operate on the basis of fear, which is basically humanity's strongest emotions, you can manipulate, you can sow discord, and you can destabilize targets quickly and effectively. And one of the reasons people are scared of gun rights is because propaganda, lies, and deception from the psychological operators have caused people to be fearful to the point where they are begging governments that they don't even trust. If you ask anybody in the street, do you trust government? Do you trust government? I bet you a high percentage of them, if not 100%, will say, no, hell, they look at you like, what the hell are you talking about? Hell no, I don't trust government. Politicians are all liars. How do I know this? Because in 2018, when I went to the March Against Our Rights, which they call the March for Our Lives, I asked a lot of people that question, and not one Democrat who wanted government to take guns trusted the government that they wanted to take guns.
In fact, I'll say repeal the Second Amendment.
Do you trust the government?
No.
The government can't be trusted. Who's left to control the guns?
Don't!
So that's the insanity of this entire gun debate, and it's the element that's actually missing here, but it's still very instructive. Listen to this.
Hey, Charlie, how are you? So I just had a question on your thoughts on if we need more gun control in the country or not. I'm very pro protecting America and the citizens that live in it, and so I think that we should have more gun control because there's a lot of school shootings that happen, as we mentioned, and I just think it would do a lot to protect people. And I think the Second Amendment also qualifies that we should have regulations for guns. I wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Sure. Do you think gun ownership is a right or a privilege?
I think it's a right, but it comes with responsibilities.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, I think that there should be things in place, things like red flag laws and things like that. The AG just approved Mel Gibson to get his gun rights back, even though he had a domestic violence charge. So, I don't think the people that commit these violent crimes should be able to buy guns and things like that. And I think we should have red flag laws in place to make sure that those violent criminals aren't getting guns.
Okay, so let's go. So tell me, in your perfect world, what would constitute a red flag?
Just things like, we can look into any kind of medication and things like that that can affect someone's...
That could be dangerous, right? That could be there's a lot of vets that come home from war and that are on a lot of medication. A lot of vets could have their weapons taken away.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying, bless you.
Thank you, it's the pollen or something, thank you.
I'm not necessarily saying, it's mainly to prevent, future shootings and things like that, and also, putting in place things like a federal registry so that we know, the types of guns that people have, and, it would just essentially be a federal registry that shows these are the guns that this person has, in case a cop has to go on something like a domestic call. That's the most dangerous call they can go on. So,
yeah, I can see you're coming after this from a good perspective. Let me ask one other question. What would you say is the ultimate and final purpose of the Second Amendment?
I think it's self-defense against a tyrannical government, which...
We agree. Sure, great. Keep going.
Well, but I think within the Second Amendment, it also implies that we have high regulations in the first four words.
Sort of.
Of
Well, well-regulated militia
right.
actually meant well-armed, but that's a separate issue. But
well, how do you know? You're interpreting what the Founding Fathers
Well,
put
they
in.
said it in the Federalist Papers, right? So it's not just me, but also in the Heller decision, in the 5-4 decision, that said that gun ownership was a right, this was a hotly debated thing.
Now, just to back Charlie on this, the founding fathers didn't provide a single explicit dictionary-style definition of well-regulated. But they did use the phrase repeatedly in writings and speeches to describe a militia that is properly organized, disciplined, trained, armed, and reliable for defense, contrasting it with undisciplined or poorly equipped forces. Now, in Federalist number 29, Alexander Hamilton did argue for a federal oversight of the militia to ensure efficiency, but his context was well regulated, meaning to achieve a high standard of training and discipline without overburdening citizens. But James Madison, during a House of Representatives debate on the Bill of Rights on June 8, 1789, said, quote, "A well-regulated militia composed of the people trained to arms is the best and most natural defense of a free country." Remember, Madison was the primary drafter of the Second Amendment, and he linked well-regulated to a broad citizenry that is armed and drilled for readiness. Not that it would be regulated or controlled by some federal bureaucracy. George Mason in the Virginia Ratifying Convention on June 14, 1788 said, quote, "A well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people trained to arms is the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state, that standing armies in times of peace should be avoided as dangerous to liberty, and that in all the cases the military should be under strict subordination to and governed by the civil power." And there's a lot more, but I'll just give you Richard Henry Lee, who wrote in 1788, "No free government was ever founded or ever preserved its liberty without uniting the characters of the citizen and soldier in those destined for the defense of the state. Such are well-regulated militia, composed of the freeholders, citizen and husbandmen, who take up arms to preserve their property as individuals and their rights as free men." So with that, we go ahead and continue with this.
Do you disagree? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Do you like disagree with the idea of like a federal registry like that?
Oh, without a doubt. The
You
only
do?
reason you'd want to register the guns is if you want to confiscate them.
Well, or to make sure that people like officers of the law are protected and know what they're going into. I mean, a domestic.
Again, that's a good argument.
Right.
To your credit, I will try to make a better argument where the problem of the government knowing where every gun is would then lead itself towards mass confiscation. And I would agree with you, a well-armed citizenry is the greatest protectorate of liberty and freedom in this country.
Even though the Army has things like drones and tanks and things like that outarm, citizens that have
Yes and
just
no.
a
I mean,
handgun?
we've seen it in several instances where at least a citizen, that's a good argument, but I would say a little flawed, where the citizens are able to protect themselves in some ways. It's a much harder population to control.
The argument here should rest completely on shall not be infringed. You have the right to keep and bear arms. The Second Amendment does not exclude any arm. It does not control how you should carry it. Should you carry it openly? Should you carry it concealed? It doesn't say you can have a musket, but you can't have a puckle gun. The colonists who started the revolution because the redcoats kept agitating them would not have said, "What? The redcoats have AR-15s and AK-47s? No, Second Amendment only applies to muskets. We just need to keep our powder dry. Maybe we'll have a chance." If you told the colonists of the 1700s, hey, future America, the future military is going to have Stinger missiles, Tomahawks, Abrams tanks, the colonists would go, well, whatever the government has, the colonists should also have, the people should have access to, because we wrote right down here in the Second Amendment, shall not be infringed. You have the right to keep and bear arms. We didn't say what arm you have the right to keep and bear. If the government has it, if they have the Predator drones and they have the RPGs, and yes, even if they have a stealth bomber, if you can afford it, you should be able to have what the military has. Brian, that's ridiculous. That's dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. If the military's got it, if the government's got it, and the Second Amendment was written so that you could ward off a tyrannical government if they got too big for their britches and they're trying to push the rest of us around, you should be able to have exactly what they have so that you can properly defend yourself. because when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. But when that government fears the people, well, we better not do that to them because they have hellfire missiles. There is liberty.
I understand, but so you think a federal registry would infringe on the rights?
Potentially. I mean, I think that there's
No, not potentially. It absolutely does. Registration, a registry, will always historically leads to confiscation. Once confiscation happens, you're dead.
good argument, I think, other than potential. I ascribe to the government bad motives and bad intentions when it wants to infringe more on these types of freedoms and liberties.
Well, I understand. I just personally don't see it as an infringement because, like we just said, and I think we agreed that owning a gun is a right. However,
Yes.
I think it was responsibilities. But also, I wanted to ask: is voting?
So that's stupid. That's nonsensical. Basically, what you're saying is you don't see an infringement as an infringement because it truly is. If you get in the way of or you hinder anybody who wants to get a personal protection device, that is by definition and by action an infringement. This guy's not making any sense. I think Charlie should have called it out.
A right, or is that a privilege?
Well, it is a right, and that's so felons can.
And I think we agreed that owning a gun is a right. However,
Yes.
I think it was responsibilities. But also, I wanted to ask: is voting a right, or is that a privilege?
Well, it is a right, and that's so felons can get their rights back, right? And so,
Right.
but rights can be suspended or delayed, and we
Right,
both agree
but-
with that. So,
right,
for
but-
example, like somebody in prison doesn't get guns.
Right.
Voting is neither a right nor a privilege. It's a travesty because what you have is the suggestion box of slaves.
No, of course.
Somebody in prison doesn't have the same free speech rights that you
Right,
have.
but what's the first thing that you have to do if you want to vote in this country? You have to register, right? So it's a federal registration to be able to vote in this country. So why not, and we can agree that, keeping safe and, keeping our elections to where people who shouldn't vote aren't voting is, that's keeping America safe because we don't want people who
That's a fair. That's a
can't
fair
vote.
point. I would say there's something that there's a technical difference between a voter registration roll and a gun registration
Right, guns
roll.
are much more dangerous.
Well, also, but guns in many different ways, they would go after the guns a lot more than the voter registration roll.
Well, how do we know, though?
My worldview comes out of one in the 20th century, where almost every totalitarian government went after the guns first, and the confiscation of guns then leads into the erosion of freedom and liberty.
Right, but wouldn't you say in the 20th century, as you just said, that the disparity between the technology that citizens had to protect themselves compared to what the military had, wouldn't you say that there was a much smaller disparity as opposed to what we see
Somewhat.
nowadays?
I think that's a fair point.
So,
I'm acknowledging that's a fair point.
okay.
But,
But I just,
do you see my perspective as well?
No, I do
that,
understand.
That in
It's-
armed
it's-
citizenry, also it says shall not be infringed, so we have to kind of wrestle with those two things
right, but
simultaneously.
so if it's just a semantics argument, then to that
Well,
point,
it's not. I mean, semantics is meaning. That's literally what the word means. But
right, but
so,
you're saying because it says shall not be infringed, we can't do anything.
No,
Does
no,
that mean,
I'm saying,
does that
though,
mean
that
voting rights can be
I'm
infringed?
saying
Because it doesn't say it cannot be infringed.
No, that is right. Shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. If anybody tries to infringe on your right to keep and bear arms, they have violated the Second Amendment, which really means they violated a principle of freedom. They have done to others what they wouldn't want done to them. They have that's the commission of a crime. To violate the Second Amendment is actually to commit a crime. That's what we should be talking about. How do you know you've committed a crime? Because you've left a victim. You've harmed somebody. You've stolen their stuff. You've damaged their property, and you refuse to pay for it. Stealing guns from somebody is theft. Theft is a crime. It leaves a victim. So therefore, the violation of the Second Amendment is the commission of a crime.
saying
Charlie Kirk does not go there. That is the most solid argument. Not only that, the second question is, okay, you want guns taken. Who do you want to take the guns? But I would first preface it with the question of, do you trust government? Now, you want the guns taken. Who do you want taking the guns? Well, I want the government to take the guns, but you just said you don't trust the government. So how does it make sense that you want an entity or a group of people who are involved in an organization? You want those people that you don't trust to take the guns. Can you please explain to me how that makes any sense at all?
err on the side that more government regulation around guns means that they'll try to take good people's guns away, which then results in less global.
I understand, but wouldn't you say that more guns can potentially lead to more danger and less guns?
Yes
would
and
lead to less
no.
danger?
I mean, there's plenty of evidence to show that states that have more, so if you take Houston and Chicago, about comparable populations, Houston actually has warmer weather, which means potentially more gang violence. They have about half, if not even less, the amount of homicides per year than in Chicago. Chicago has much stricter gun laws than Houston, like incredibly strict gun laws.
I understand, but I'm also, well, I think part of what plays into that is the gun laws that are around those cities. They're a lot more lenient than those cities themselves. So I think, I'm not saying that's entirely the cause of it, but I'm saying
I've heard that my whole life, so yeah.
Right, but I'm basically just talking about preventing people that have committed crimes such as domestic violence. I know I mentioned Pam Bondi gave Mel Gibson his rights to purchase a gun again, even though he pled guilty to battery domestic violence charge in 2011, and yet now he is able to purchase a gun again, which I disagree with because he committed a violent crime. I mean, do you disagree with that personally?
No, I mean, I don't know the details of the case, but I think I've met Mel Gibson. I think he should be able to own a gun. I mean, like
just off of speaking to him though, even though with his
yeah,
criminal
I mean,
history.
I don't know all the details. Do I think that the idea of taking his rights away because of something that happened that I don't know all the details about 14 years ago?
Guilty to it though.
Again, I find that to be a little bit of an infringement on basic rights.
Well, not only that, if somebody did their time after they've committed the crime and they're out of jail, if they're trusted with freedom, then why wouldn't all of their rights be restored? It doesn't make any sense. If you don't trust them to have a gun, what if they buy a hammer? What if they buy a knife? What if they use their fists? What if they get behind the wheel of a car and decide to mow a whole bunch of people over? If you don't trust them with a gun, how are you trusting them behind the wheel of a car or with a kitchen knife? 0 sense at all.
Even though he
Again, I don't know the details around that, but I guess we're getting to a place where, do you think anyone that's convicted of violent crime should be able to own guns again?
No, not at
Oh,
all.
wow,
If they're committing a violent crime, absolutely not. I think we should protect people in America, which I think you agree with, and I think that's how we protect America.
That's a balance.
If you want to protect people in America and they committed a violent crime to the point where they went to prison, then don't let them out of prison if you think they're going to commit another crime.
The government is going to protect us from ourselves when it comes to guns.
No, I mean, it's less about the federal government taking away guns and more just allowing them to protect their citizens. And it's not about getting rid of guns. I'm a gun owner myself. I go hunting. I was on a competitive
What
team.
state would you say has the gun laws that are the most appealing to your worldview?
I don't know specific state laws, if I'm being completely honest with you, but
something to think about.
But I'm speaking, even just the federal registry itself. I think that would protect, a lot of officers of the law. Like I said, when they go on domestic calls, that's the most dangerous call that an officer
So
of the law can go on.
there's an informal registry, not a formal one. Just gun dealers are supposed to report.
Right,
gun,
but do you really
sales.
think that they do all the time? Though?
No, of course not. Obviously, I mean,
right.
I
So
live
wouldn't
in
the
reality.
federal registry eliminate that problem then?
Again, I would go back to a formal registry. You register in order to confiscate. It is a prerequisite towards confiscation.
Isn't that just a slippery slope argument, though? If you give one thing, then another thing
it's a historical argument, right? We see that throughout totalitarian dictatorships throughout the 20th century, where if you want to take the weapons away, you first ask for a collection of all the items that you then want to collect. But I could see you're coming after this in good faith. I tend to be on a much more libertarian side, even though I'm not libertarian. We actually need looser gun laws because I think that
gun laws.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, especially in states like Chicago and Illinois, where it's very basic Second Amendment rights.
Actually, if you're Second Amendment, you want no gun laws, not looser gun laws, because any law, even if there's just one law on the books, it's going to violate the Second Amendment because it's going to be an infringement. Take universal background checks. Take the NICS instant background check system, for example. It's the government saying, well, we're going to put you through our system, and if we find out you've been a good boy or a good girl, we might let you go ahead and purchase a firearm. No free man seeks permission from another man to live free and exercise his rights. From the perspective of the Second Amendment, it's all or nothing. It shall not be infringed or you're against gun rights. Also, 2 more euphemisms need to be tackled. And Charlie Kirk, I've never heard any Republican try to tackle this. It's gun violence and gun control. There's no such thing as inanimate object violence. If you think there is, then you have to demonstrate that. Is there knife violence? Is there baseball bat violence? Only people can do violence to others. And the second thing is gun control. You're not controlling the guns, you're controlling the people who want to own the gun. So it's really people control. It's all a manipulation. It's a psychological operation. It is propaganda.
Rights. So I'll give you a great example.
Okay.
In a state like Rhode Island or New York,
right.
It could take a woman upwards of 30 days to get a gun. So let's say a man wants to actually do harm to her. and she gets threats and the police won't intervene, I think she should be able to get a gun that afternoon to protect
Very good point.
herself.
I understand that.
So
but
in that case, I think that gun laws should be looser.
I understand.
I think
in that regard, I do agree with you.
Cool. So like
Absolutely.
that would be an instance of that. And I also will go back to this idea of red flag laws. We have seen case after case of it being abused, of veterans having their weapons taken away.
And this is where Charlie Kirk's hypocrisy shines through, because he lived a large portion of the end of his life supporting Donald red flag gun confiscation law Trump. Red flag laws are gun confiscation laws based on what somebody else thinks about you and your mental state. So when you promote somebody who is pro red flag law, you're promoting the person who is anti Second Amendment, but you claim to be pro Second Amendment, pushing an anti Second Amendment agenda. Never mind, I like take the guns first, due process second. It's all a bunch of hypocrisy and a load of BS.
Because of fake accusations and, let's just say, faulty accusations, saying that they're mentally unbalanced, so on and so forth.
But do you think that they could investigate cases like that and see if there aren't any medications? I mean, a lot of these
They can.
antidepressants can change your brain chemistry.
For sure. And some of it, though,
you.
is they take the guns away first and they ask questions after. It's a difficult...
I like take the guns first, due process second.
Or might take the firearms first and then go to court. I like taking the guns early. Take the guns first, go through due process second.
They take the guns away first and they ask questions after.
Even more glaring hypocrisy on the part of Charlie Kirk. And don't minimize this. This is very dangerous. This proves right here that Charlie Kirk, while claiming to be pro-Second Amendment, was anti-Second Amendment, because you're either for it or you're against it. You can't be moderately pregnant. You can't be kind of pregnant, just like you can't be, well, I'm kind of Second Amendment. When you say you're pro-Second Amendment, you are for shall not be infringed. And when you endorse somebody who's not, you're a freaking hypocrite.
Very, I don't want to say gray area, but edge part of the law, where I tend to, and a respectable position, respect to you, I tend to err on the side of it is a right, the government screws up more than it does correct in this specific portion, and the downside to having more guns is far better than the downside of having only the government have guns.
Even if that can cost American lives, though? I mean, me personally, I would give up all of my guns in a heartbeat if I knew for a fact that it was going to save one life.
Can I
That is ridiculous. That's a false dichotomy. I will give up my guns if it'll save one life. But what if Stephen Williford lived like that? Remember Sutherland Springs, the Sutherland Springs shooter? Was taken down by Stephen Williford before the cops with guns even got there. What if Stephen Williford at one time said, if I could just save one life, I'll get rid of my guns. And then he gets rid of his gun. Sutherland Springs happens. And now he doesn't have a gun to defend the people who are getting slaughtered. And the guy who he ended up taking out with his AR-15 goes on to murder more people because he didn't have his guns. I hate that when people say, if you love the children, you'll give up your guns. If you don't give up your guns, you don't love the children. And then there's a guy who goes, what are you giving me a false choice for? How about I keep my guns because I love my children? I keep my guns because I live close to a school, and if a shooter was there trying to wreak havoc and end a bunch of little people's lives, I'm going in there with my guns to defend those children or die trying. This false choice that is laid before us in the minds of this guy right here and all the politicians, including Charlie Kirk when he was alive, is disgusting to me.
Experiment to you?
Sure.
So do you think we should ban driving?
No, I don't think so. And I know where you're going with this.
55,000 people a year die from car accidents, right?
Right,
so
absolutely. But those are accidents, though. That's not someone intentionally
well,
going
that's
and
not
killing
true.
somebody.
Some people intentionally do, or some people have DUIs, right? Some of it is an act of agency, not just accidents, right? Meaning that they are reckless with the technology.
I understand.
You would agree a DUI is a reckless act.
Oh, for sure.
And that's a vast majority of auto deaths,
right,
both in the interior of the vehicle and the exterior.
Right, but then what do you have to do to be able to drive, though? You have to get a driver's license. You have to take a test with an instructor.
No, of course, but I'm saying if the pursuit of to save, if it's all about saving lives, then there are certain things that we'd get rid of. I would say, though, that government is not merely there for our safety. It's one of the primary focuses. You have to balance liberty and safety.
And this is kind of echoed in the Declaration of Independence. Governments are installed to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's it. They're not there to regulate your life. They're not there to show you how you should pursue happiness. They're there to just make sure you don't get messed with. They're not there to make laws that will mess with you.
Tough balance at times. I fall on this issue on the side of liberty. Final thought.
So what? Yeah, just one last quick question. I promise. What about?
He doesn't fall on the side of liberty. He falls on the side of tyranny light because he's not truly shall not be infringed.
Something, as I mentioned, with taking a driving test, to be able to get a driver's license, you have to prove that you know how to operate the vehicle safely. What about something similar to that with owning a gun? Some kind of thing where you go to a range with a trained professional,
No.
you show that you know how to operate the gun, safely, know how to store it safely, things like that. Yet,
Yeah,
and then
so
once you pass that, you get some kind of card that allows you to buy a gun.
I
mean, it's all
think
about
that,
protections. It's not about
yes,
restricting
on
rights.
that you might have some agreement with me, because actually the number one cause of errant gun deaths is accidental discharges. People that don't know what they're doing with their gun.
I understand.
And so I think that could be prevented through better training. So for that, I actually might have some middle ground.
I want to sum this up with I'd rather have dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. I don't want slavery in any way, shape, or form. This video right here, put out by Charlie Kirk or Charlie Kirk's team, perfectly displays the hypocrisy that was residing in his heart regarding the Second Amendment and those four very easy to understand words, shall not be infringed. So let me ask you before I leave, are you pro Second Amendment? I mean, shall not be infringed, or are you just pretending like you're pro Second Amendment? Don't bother subscribing to my channel or hitting the bell notification or liking or sharing this video, but do stand on principle and righteousness.